Alrighty, welcome back to a very interesting portion of 2 Thessalonians. And I want to start in this segment in verse number 7 of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 to read a phrase that I think there's more there than what a lot of us have thought. It's again that phrase, the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. And so again, this is in the context of Paul talking about the end times, the great apostasy, the Antichrist being revealed. And so what he's saying is that things are already in motion. This mystery of lawlessness. Why are people in this rebellion towards God that escalates and then finally culminates in this grand rebellion by all of the earth as they chase after a false God who declares himself to be God and blasphemes the true God? You know, why is that? Well, that's a great question, and it's a mystery. That's why it's called a mystery. But here's what I want to point out. Paul says, and he said this 2,000 years ago, the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. So already we're seeing the fruit of this rebellion in people's heart that will culminate in the end times, which he didn't know it, but it was still 2,000 years away, at least 2,000 years away. It could be 2,000 years more yet, for all we know. We don't know. But here's the point I wanted to make. As we see things, as we see that mystery of lawlessness escalate and increase, where it does seem that way. As I'm recording this, I'm 55 years of age, and in my lifetime, I have watched the world and the culture in which I live go down this descending slope into more and more degradation and licentiousness and lawless living and perverse stuff and out and outright rebellion against God, you know, to unprecedented degrees. I think, again, I'm no expert in history, but it just seems to me that, you know, when you got a nation that hundreds of and thousands of people are aborting, murdering their own babies every day, and this is the law of the land, and it's acceptable as long as the baby is in the womb and under a certain age since it was conceived. When you've got homosexuality that is just, exploded, and then the acceptance of it also explodes. Just doesn't seem like we've seen this kind of evil in our earth on such a large, grand scale ever before. And if it has happened before, it's been a long time. Billy Graham said, if God doesn't judge America, he'll have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. And that statement encapsulates what I'm trying to convey to you. Okay, so don't be discouraged as things descend into greater wickedness. It's worse yet to come. And the chaos and the darkness is going to get more chaotic and darker. And during the time of the tribulation, when there's worldwide persecution against those who refuse to take the mark of the beast and give their allegiance to the Antichrist, chasing, when the world is chasing them down, and when worldwide we're running for our lives to try to preserve our lives at a time when, everyone hates the followers of Jesus. Everyone hates them. Everyone is hell-bent on finding them and apprehending them and eliminating them. That's the pinnacle of wickedness. And of course, that's getting close to the end times. And many Christians will survive that. Jesus made that very clear. Flee and see if you can preserve your life. If you don't preserve your life, well, you're with Christ, so what's the big difference? But my point is that if you think it's bad now, you haven't seen anything yet. And there are some Christians who are living in nations that right now it seems like to them they're in those final days. And maybe that's why the Thessalonians were so open to the idea that the day of the Lord had come, because of the intense persecution that they were experiencing. Maybe they're thinking, well, this must be the end. Whoever they identified as the instigator of the persecution, the chief instigator, they might have identified him as the Antichrist. I don't know. But there are followers of Christ living in nations today, as I'm sitting here recording this, that, it's just as if they're living in the time of tribulation, because there is a political agenda against them from the highest authorities in their country to, remove them or eliminate them. in a few nations. And then, of course, it's localized and regionalized on a smaller scale. Okay, the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Now, the second part of verse number 7. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. Now, that is a verse that has caused a lot of confusion. Who is he who now restrains and who will do so until he is taken out of the way? We kind of skipped over verse number 6, where Paul said, you know what restrains him now. That is the Antichrist. You know what restrains him now, so that in his time he will be revealed. Now, who is it? Who is it who's going to be revealing him in his time? Well, I can't think of anybody myself, personally. It's not the President of the United States. It's not me. It's not the Premier of Russia. You know, these people, none of us have the authority or the power to restrain the rise of the Antichrist and decide, when he will be revealed. That seems to me to be something that would be reserved only for God. And that only God could possibly, who is in charge of the times and the epochs and the seasons and who rules sovereignly over history so that history is his story, it would just seem to me only God. That's what restrains him now. That's the only thing that's holding this rise of evil and this progression of lawlessness to the point where it's going to get. God has got some kind of restraining that's holding it back by his grace. But you say, but wait a second, it couldn't be God, because it talks about in verse 7 how he will restrain, he now restrains until he is taken out of the way. So is God going to be taken out of the way? How do we explain that? Is the Holy Spirit going to leave the earth? Lots of explanations. I think I've got a good one for you in the next segment. See you next time.
HeavenWord 7 is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you.